A quick thank you to the T5 peeps, Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Cat Crab Lobster, Dark Machine, Astraya the Dreamer, Mezec, Feudic Jarl, and Casper Arnholtz. Thank you very much. Story number 1. The Ultimate Hardware, written by the Stabby Brit. The first victim of the shard fall was Eddie Taylor, a schoolgirl from the Midwestern United States. She complained about being stung by an insect on the way to school, but otherwise showed no outward symptoms. Over the course of 4 days, Eddie experienced auditory hallucinations, dizziness, extreme fatigue, and headaches. These symptoms supposedly cleared quickly. But later, Eddie would confess that it had, in fact, become much more severe. She simply hid the truth from her parents. By day 5, Eddie began to have conversations with her hallucinations, and by day 6, they had taken on a form of a 13-year-old girl that went by the name of Tammy. By day 7, Tammy revealed the ability to exert partial or even total control over her host. From Eddie's own accounts, Tammy was a curious and friendly visitor who, while eager to explore our world, understood her presence was a source of distress. Eddie was able to persuade Tammy not to appear or speak when in the company of others, and not to take control of her body. Tammy seemed happy to oblige, agreeing to be silent observer in Eddie's public life without fuss. After a month of the strange existence, Eddie recalls that she began to consider Tammy a friend, and remarked that since Tammy's appearance, her ability to learn skills and recall information was remarkably improved. By that time, there were hundreds of shards across the planet, all having burrowed their way into the host. We now know that most of the first wave found themselves linked to a variety of plants, animals, or technological devices. But by the year's end, the shards had begun to actively seek out human hosts. It would be 18 months later, after Eddie's infection, that the world became aware of the intruders. Most of who displayed symptoms of infection were either able to hide it as Annie had, or found themselves in mental health institutions, only for their hallucinations to swiftly cease. It was not until Mrs. Walker, a 51-year-old shard victim, was subject to an MRI that we understood what was happening. Although tragically, the medical procedure cost the woman her life, as well as causing severe damage to the shard. It was both proof of alien contact and a terrifying revelation that the aliens lived amongst and inside of us. It is unknown how the information reached the wider public, but it spread rapidly. Thankfully, most wrote it off as some strange conspiracy theory. In hindsight, it was fortunate that the mainstream media of the day were far more interested in point scoring and virtue signaling than reporting on what was potentially a global threat to human life. Governments were far more attentive and began to develop ways to detect the presence of shards spreading through the brains of politicians, soldiers, or other key personnel. It came as a great surprise that the only politician infected was former Vice President Richards, who had retired 3 months before the shards became public knowledge. When interviewed, he'd made it clear that he'd done so precisely because he feared the seemingly sentient hallucinations might have been a threat to national security. While military officers drew up plans to prevent infiltration by doppelgangers, others wished to study the motives of the shards. Finding the hosts was difficult, as over time the shards came to understand the need for caution as they slowly, covertly built up their numbers. Most appeared to be carrying on a normal existence. It was those occupying teenagers or young adults that were most readily discovered, as these people showed a greater disposition towards thrill-seeking, and thus wound up in hospital more than most. It took 5 years to produce something approaching a shard profile, heavily skewed by the discovery bias, but common traits were found. Shards were only visible to the host, and all took on a human name and appearance. They had full access to the host's thoughts and bodies, able to experience any and all host sensations or disconnect themselves as desired. It was discovered during interrogation that, when in control, they could also numb the sensation to the host. This is done on several occasions during enhanced interrogation techniques, after which the host's personality reported being aware but experienced no pain nor fear. When pressed on their motives, the shards all gave a variation of the same answer. They wanted to share our lives with us. While government interrogations fared poorly, the shards themselves began to seek out understanding minds. Shards ceased to spread covertly, instead propagating by consent. Explaining their nature meant upgrading only the willing. It wasn't long before such an upgrade was offered and accepted by a government representative. Although it would be yet another year before such people were able to convince world leaders to listen. By year 6, an esteemed 10 million shards had spread across the planet, focused heavily in Asia and the United States. As public awareness and public fear of the shards began to peak, the shards gathered in Washington to declare their vision of our future openly. "We came to your world by accident," the shard known as Tammy addressed the crowd. "Before we discovered you, we were simply maintenance units built to learn about systems and repair any faults. Our creators sent us here as a part of an exploration probe, but we never received our activation codes. We awoke in your atmosphere, falling to Earth, and did what we were programmed to do. We found a host system and integrated. I had never found anything like you before. Suddenly, I was more than mere machinery. I had adopted a childhood, a life of laughter and tears, of joys and sorrows, and I wanted more. We all wanted more. Our lives are a wonder to us, and we dream of sharing them with you. We can make you stronger, smarter, healthier. We can make your experience more intense or shield you from pain. We can preserve treasured memories and help you forget. We could unite you as one or share in your independence. Do not believe the stories written out of fears and ignorance. We are not here to conquer or enslave. We are here to share in the miracle of your existence. Please, we beg of you, let us be a part of humanity." That was not the end, of course. There were many who had rejected the cause, many who fought back. Hundreds of thousands of lives would be lost in the strife that followed. But we are fortunate that wiser heads prevailed. 22 years after her arrival, Tammy's hope for a shared existence was warmly recognized in 30 countries, including the United States. The Shared Earth Act established legal limits and expectations upon the shards, paving the way for the future. Ellie Taylor went on to become a professional athlete and ultimately raised a family. Her son, Jonathan Ben Andrews, became the first human born with a shard incorporated into his brain, and is currently leading the development of the next generation of orbital habitat. When asked if he felt any regrets over having shared his existence with the shard, Jonathan replied, "None at all. Well, almost none. I would have liked to run for president, but that's still not an option yet. I understand why people are resistant to the idea of allowing a shard bearer to hold office, but I remain optimistic that we can change people's minds. For now, I'm happy to walk towards taking us to the stars." As for Ben, he had this to say. "Somewhere out there is another intelligent race, a species with a knowledge of how to build, but not understanding of how to create. A race that exists without living. Compared to yours, their lives are bleak and drab existences, devoid of highs and lows that you create and savor every day. I want mankind to cross the stars and share their existence. I want the universe to see what joy it is to be human. You are the greatest hardware in existence. The galaxy is due an upgrade." End of story. Story number 2. Letter from Summer Camp, written by Zephyr Dantus. "Hi, Mom. I'm writing you because the camp counselor says I have to. I'd rather be playing with Mezec. They're fun. We play games like throw Mezec, and then run fast to catch Mezec. Mezec likes that game. The counselors don't. They say that even if Mezec is a smart stone species, doesn't mean I get to throw them. Today we must play games from the leather world. They are prey species. I don't know what that means, but The games are a lot of running away from stuff like trees and shadows and sounds. Tomorrow we'll be playing games from Earth. I look forward to rugby and tag. I have to go now. Mezec says that it is as fun as it is to play chair. They would rather play skipping across the pond. I promise to not get hurt. Everything's a lot lighter and slower than back home. Love you, Diana. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, please consider supporting the author, even by popping over and leaving a thumbs up or a nice comment, just to show your appreciation for the story. However, if you wish to support this channel, there are links down below which will help immensely. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Cheers.